I never planned for it to happen, but the moment Mack Dom walked into my life, everything changed. He was danger, temptation, my biggest mistake, and yet the only salvation I craved. What started as a secret turned into the one thing I couldn't walk away from. Please don't forget to subscribe and comment. I used to think mistakes were meant to be erased, buried where no one could dig them up again. But then life threw me into something I could never undo, and I realized that sometimes mistakes are not endings at all, they are beginnings. My name is Brielle Hayes, and the greatest mistake of my life was also the one thing that saved me. His name is Mack Dom, and he's my stepbrother. The night my mother married Daniel Dom, everything shifted. I had promised myself I would smile through it, because she deserved happiness after years of heartbreak. Daniel seemed like a man who would give her exactly that, steady, respectful, grounded. What I didn't expect was his son, Mack. He arrived late to the reception, walking in like the rules of time didn't apply to him. The air changed the moment he stepped inside. He had the kind of presence that made people look, whether they wanted to or not. His hair was dark, his shoulders broad, his suit sharp but worn like it didn't matter, his tie hanging loose around his neck. His eyes caught mine across the room, and for one suspended moment it felt like the world tilted. He smirked, subtle but deliberate, and I felt it like a spark under my skin. I looked away quickly, trying to steady myself, but something had already shifted inside me. We spoke only briefly that night, polite words wrapped in tension that neither of us named. He teased me in the smallest ways, like raising an eyebrow when I stumbled over my words or letting his gaze linger just long enough to make me wonder what he was thinking. I hated how aware I was of him, how my heart seemed to speed up in his orbit. I told myself it was nothing. He was my stepbrother now, for God's sake. I repeated that truth in my head like a prayer. But prayers don't always protect you. A few weeks later, my mother invited me to the Dom Lake house for the weekend. She said it would be a family getaway, a chance to bond. I agreed without asking who would be there. When I walked into the kitchen and saw Mack leaning against the counter with a beer in his hand, his mouth curling into a slow smile as his eyes traveled down me like he had been waiting, I nearly dropped my bag. From the start, the air between us was thick. Every glance carried something sharp. Every exchange felt like it had too much meaning. I tried to keep my distance, but he had a way of filling every space. At dinner, he sat across from me, his knee brushing mine under the table just long enough to feel intentional. When I glared, he just smirked like he enjoyed watching me squirm. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house was silent, the lake outside reflecting the silver wash of moonlight. I stepped onto the deck for air, hoping the cool night would settle my thoughts. But Mack was already there. He leaned against the railing, his profile lit by the faint glow of the moon. He didn't turn at first, but I felt the moment he registered me. His voice cut through the quiet, low and rough. "Can't sleep either?" I froze, then shook my head. Too many thoughts. Finally, he turned, his eyes locking with mine. Something unspoken flickered there. Dangerous, undeniable. His lips curved slightly. "You shouldn't be out here with me." I should have gone back inside. Instead, I moved closer. We stood side by side at the railing, silence stretching thick between us. When his hand brushed against mine, it was not by accident. My breath caught. I should have pulled away. I didn't. From that moment, something shifted. The days blurred with tension. Every accidental touch burned. Every look lingered too long. He teased me constantly, his voice dipping lower when he leaned close, his eyes scanning me in ways that made my skin flush. But beyond the teasing, I caught glimpses of something raw. Sometimes I found him staring into the distance, his jaw tight, his expression haunted. There were shadows in him, shadows I wanted to understand. One evening, a storm rolled in. The sky ripped open with lightning, rain hammering against the windows, and the power cut out, leaving the house wrapped in darkness. My mother and Daniel had gone into town for supplies, leaving Mack and me alone. We lit a fire in the living room, sitting close to it as the storm raged outside. He talked that night, more than I had ever heard him talk before. His voice carried the weight of mistakes and regrets, of people who had left him, of guilt he couldn't shake. For the first time, I saw past the cocky smirk and the dangerous edges. I saw the broken man underneath. Something inside me softened. Without thinking, I reached for his hand. He didn't move at first. He stared at our joined fingers like he couldn't believe it. Then, slowly, he threaded his through mine. My chest tightened, my breath hitched, and when his eyes lifted to mine, everything else fell away. The kiss was inevitable. It crashed into me, fierce and desperate, his mouth hot against mine, his hand gripping the back of my neck like he couldn't let go. My body pressed into his, my pulse thundering in my ears. The storm outside was nothing compared to the one inside me. From that night forward, nothing was the same. We stole moments whenever we could. A brush of his hand against mine, under the dinner table. A stolen kiss in the hallway when no one was watching. Late-night whispers in dark corners, confessions too dangerous to say in daylight. Every touch carried risk. Every glance was a secret. Every second together a battle between restraint and surrender. At night, I lay awake hating myself for wanting him, yet craving him with a hunger that made my chest ache. He was wrong for me in every possible way, but he was also the only one who made me feel alive. We nearly got caught once. My mother came home earlier than expected, and Mack and I barely had time to step apart. My heart pounded in my throat as she walked in, completely unaware of what she had interrupted. I'll never forget the wild fear in his eyes, the way he ran a hand through his hair like he was holding himself together by threads. That was when I realized just how reckless this was. I told him it had to end, that we couldn't do this anymore. He nodded, but the silence in his eyes said he didn't believe it. For weeks, we tried to stay apart. I buried myself in distractions, but nothing worked. I missed him with a hunger that gnawed at me. Every time our eyes met, the pull was stronger than before. One morning, I found him standing at the end of the dock, the sunrise painting the sky in streaks of gold and pink. His shoulders were tense, his hands shoved into his pockets. I walked to him without thinking. He didn't turn, but when I reached him, his hand found mine like it belonged there. And I knew, in that moment, I was lost all over again. What we shared was messy, reckless, forbidden. But it was real. In his arms, I felt seen in a way I had never been before. In his eyes, I found the truth I had been running from. Mack Dom was my mistake, because I knew loving him could destroy everything. But he was also my salvation, because he pulled me out of the emptiness I had been drowning in. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe it will all come crashing down. Maybe we'll burn in the fire we lit together. Or maybe, against all odds, we'll find a way. But one thing is certain. Mack is both the storm that broke me and the fire that rebuilt me. He is my mistake, my salvation, and the one truth I can't deny. He is all of it, wrapped into my stepbrother. Thanks for your love. Please don't forget press the bell icon for more interesting stories.